So the second set of questions I wanted to address concerned ambiguity and unity. And Taha and Eugenia both asked questions like ambiguity as a longevity tactic, and why is ambiguity good for coalitions? And looking over the forum posts, I noticed that, or the thread posts, I noticed that Derek probably got most of my reply to this question in his own. So the idea is that without ambiguity in the decision outcome or the attainment of your goal, there's really little incentive to be in a coalition. I mean, if you recall, a coalition forms when participants have inconsistent preferences or mostly parochial interests. And they realize they can't achieve their goals without the support of others. So because of that, they find compromises, and the temporary coalition holds only until the issue is resolved or the decision is made. So they really have little incentive to kind of stick together once that issue is resolved. If all the participants' goals are consistent and if there's a universal agreement, then the social structure really is stable, and you have something more like a hierarchical organization than a coalition. So a good example to consider when you think about coalitions like as a coalition government. And each group in that government has its own parochial interests, right? And none of them can rule without the support of others. So they form these coalitions by bargaining, trading, log rolling, compromise, all in the effort to kind of make a voting bloc that gets things done, that kind of meets their interests, but with a great deal of compromise. If it was the case that they could ever go, if any of those parties could go it alone, um, you know, and attain their own goals, that it was unambiguous or certain that they could do that, then all the dynamics of coalition formation probably wouldn't hold. So another form of organizing would take place. A somewhat related question was about unity, and here the question was, by Rob Walker, which was, how can an organization maintain focus and unity if coalitions exist within itself? And I think it helps to consider a competing question here, which is, how can an organization change without coalitions? Whenever goals, preferences, those kinds of things diverge, but you still need coordination, or some kind of collective decision to act, so you're probably going to see a coalition. And this internal ambiguity and conflict is common in many firms, especially when things aren't working well, or the way they're supposed to, or the way people had hoped. And a coalition is actually a means of change and enabling the organization to adapt. It's also a point of potential dysfunction as well. So a constantly conflicted, ambiguous context or changing experience isn't ideal for most organizations. So I also see the point of the original question about focus. So that makes sense. That said, I don't want you to think purely in terms of dysfunction, right? Coalitions are mostly temporary, and I often see the emergence of them kind of correlating with managing problems or change or some kind of organizational innovation.